You hear the primal scream of the jungle. You feel the rhythmic pounding of the galleys. You recognize the slaves on their way to their destiny, and feel the fear of what awaits them there. So they call to the Almighty and implore him for mercy and protection. Kumbaya, my lord.
This is the true, albeit unlikely story of the marriage between an African princess and a Scotsman. A marriage which defied the prevailing norms of racial segregation and lasted until death did them part. It is the story of the atrocities and land expropriation without compensation perpetrated against their children. James Jamieson, strong, hardy, handsome lad, was born in Scotland in 1871. At the age of 21 in 1892, James arrived in Mashonaland, then Northern Rhodesia, as a member of the pioneer column led by Cecil John Rhodes. In 1896, James met and fell in love with Ntinta, royal princess and daughter of His Majesty King Lubosi Lewanika, then King of Barotseland. Ntinta's sister, Her Majesty Queen Tebogo Kebailele, was the mother of Sir Seretse Khama, who became president of Botswana. James and Ntinta lived together as husband and wife for 40 years until Ntinta's death in 1937. James served in 3 wars, including the Boer War, and was recognized as a war veteran. On the 22nd of February 1902, James and Ntinta purchased Roseburn Farm in Kami, Bulawayo. Ntinta was a wealthy woman in her own right, possessed of many cattle. However, although she paid 50% of the purchase price, since the natives of the then Rhodesia had been completely expropriated from all of their lands by the British South African Company, they were prohibited from purchasing land, so title vested and was transferred solely and unfairly into the name of James Jamieson alone. In 1902, Ntinta moved her 115 cattle from Nyamandlovu to Roseburn Farm, and the couple's wealth was derived from their cattle farm. In October 1926, Ntinta and James purchased Wallendale Estate, which again could only be transferred into James's name. In 1929, in the presence of and by the authority vested in the Bulawayo District Commissioner, James and Ntinta were legally married. 7 children were born of the union. 2 died in infancy during the Boer War between 1899 and 1902. The 5 surviving children were Elizabeth, born in 1910, Anne, born in 1912, John, born in 1914, Molly, born in 1916, and McCluskey, born in 1923. On the 12th of September 1930, James did validly execute his last will and testament. Like any loving, dutiful, and concerned father, James did bequeath all of his earthly possessions to his 5 children. On the 17th of September 1937, Ntinta died. Within days of her death, as documented on the Google website indicated, James's white nephew, Jim William Jamieson, came to Roseburn Farm, locked the now elderly 66-year-old grandfather James in his room, beat him up and threatened to kill him. Jim verbally abused James, using the most vile, derogatory, and unspeakable insults, asking him, quote, "Why are you living with Kaffirs?" Close quote. Being aware of the prevailing racist laws, Jim declared that everything belonged to him and nothing to the, quote, Kaffirs, close quote, meaning James's children and grandchildren. Immediately upon the death of James at the age of 81 in 1952, James's nephew Jim, accompanied by the British South African police, with extreme force and brutality, descended on Roseburn Farm and served James's family with a notice of immediate eviction. The baton-wielding police chased James's daughters, their spouses, and their young defenseless children off the farm. No mercy was shown, even though both Elizabeth and Anne were in their final stages of pregnancy and were also accompanied by young babies. They were not permitted to take anything and left with only the clothing on their backs. At Wallendale Estate, when James's son John resisted eviction, the police violently beat him, broke his leg, and threw him into prison without charge for 3 months. John's wife and small terrified children escaped into the forest, hungry and without even a change of clothing. All of the Jamieson property, including both farms, livestock, farm implements, trucks, etc., was seized, and the entire Jamieson family were left homeless, destitute, and reduced to poverty. The Jamieson family have expended exorbitant amounts of money, in excess of £14,000 in legal fees, in a futile bid to recover their rightful inheritance, which was transferred to and bestowed upon a white British settler. This travesty of justice was facilitated by operation of the Immorality Act of 1931, which dehumanized and deemed James and Natinta's children to be nothing more than the products of crime. Furthermore, the Land Apportionment Act of 1930 rescinded the rights of Africans to land ownership and implemented a system of racially discriminatory land segregation. Since both Roseburn and Wallendale farms were situated in designated whites-only territory, the Jamieson children were disqualified from inheriting or living on their own farms, purely on the basis of the color of their skin.
Jimmy.